Based on the information we reviewed, this is our decision.
I think we're missing part of the story.
Maybe we should look again. Dad,
I told the truth, then we'll find it.
the school has reached its decision.
Then let's review every detail.
I don't think we've seen everything.
Dad, thank you for believing me. We'll let the truth speak.
They suspended my son before they even watched the whole video. Darius Reed's voice remained steady, but his hand tightened around the flash drive lying on the school board table. Across the crowded room, Principal Evelyn Harrow sat beneath the glare of television cameras, repeating that 14-year-old Micah had violently attacked another student and shoved a teacher. Then Darius opened the school's security file. The hallway clock jumped forward 12 seconds. A fire door slammed shut, and just before the image disappeared, a man in a gray district jacket stepped from the maintenance alcove, carrying something the school claimed had never existed. Micah looked at his father, his eyes asking the question no child should ever have to ask. Would the truth matter now? Before we continue, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. And subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories about family, courage, and justice. 9 days before the school board hearing, Darius Reed woke at 4:47 a.m., 3 minutes before the alarm. He lay still in the darkness, listening to the old duplex breathe around him. The furnace clicked beneath the floor. A delivery truck groaned somewhere along Marlowe Avenue. Rain tapped against the bedroom window in thin, uncertain fingers. From the room across the hall came the faint scrape of a chair. Darius sat up. Micah? No answer. He pulled on gray sweatpants and stepped into the hallway. A strip of light spilled from beneath Micah's bedroom door. Inside, 14-year-old Micah Reed sat hunched over a crowded desk, tightening a copper wire around the frame of a small machine built from plastic panels, salvaged wheels, and the remains of an old smoke detector. His curls were flattened on one side from sleep. A pair of safety goggles rested crookedly on his forehead. Darius leaned against the door frame. You planning to graduate before breakfast? Micah glanced over his shoulder. I couldn't sleep. So naturally, you decided to perform surgery on a robot. It's not a robot. It's an autonomous air quality rover. Darius looked at the shoebox-sized machine. My mistake. Does the autonomous air quality rover know it's sitting on my good screwdriver? Micah lifted the tool and handed it back. Darius entered the room and studied the project more closely. A row of tiny sensors lined the front panel. The science club would use it to measure temperature, humidity, and pollution levels around the school garden. You fixed the left motor, Darius said. Micah nodded. The voltage regulator was dropping under load. Darius smiled. You're getting dangerous. You taught me. I taught you how not to burn the house down. Everything after that was YouTube and stubbornness. Micah gave a tired laugh, but it faded quickly. Darius noticed. He had learned to read his son through small things. The way Micah chewed the inside of his cheek when worried. The way he organized pencils by length when trying not to talk. The way he avoided eye contact when a problem involved someone else. Darius picked up a loose washer from the desk. What's going on? Nothing. That answer usually costs me money. Micah turned back to the machine. It's just school. School has names. Micah hesitated. Connor Bellamy. Darius's fingers stopped moving. He knew the name. Everyone in Linden Falls did. Grant Bellamy's company owned half the new construction on the north side, including the glass office tower that had replaced the old train depot. His foundation had funded Westbridge Middle School's renovated gym, new computer lab, and the banners hanging above the main entrance. His son, Connor, wore that influence like armor. What about him? Darius asked. He's been bothering people. What kind of bothering? Micah shrugged. Taking stuff. Threatening people, acting like nobody can touch him. Has he bothered you? He tried. Darius set the washer down. Micah, he wanted answers to the math assessment. From you? From anybody who had them. You have them? No, but he thinks Luis does. Darius knew Luis Mendoza as a quiet 7th grader who sometimes came to the duplex to work on science club projects. Small for his age. Careful with every word. The kind of boy who apologized when someone else bumped into him. What makes Connor think Luis has test answers? Luis helps Miss Cole organize the lab. Connor says Luis saw something in her desk. And what did you say? I told Connor to leave him alone. Darius exhaled through his nose. Micah looked up. I didn't start anything. I didn't say you did. You were about to. I was about to ask whether you told an adult. Micah's expression hardened. Which adult? The question landed heavier than its volume. Darius studied him. Miss Cole, the counselor, Principal Harrow. Micah looked away. Connor's dad paid for the computer lab. Harrow thanks him at every assembly like he built the school with his bare hands. That doesn't mean... It means people listen differently when his name comes up. Darius wanted to argue. He wanted to tell Micah that rules were rules, that adults would step in, that schools were built to protect children. But he remembered being 17 in a police station, watching his older brother Marcus sit handcuffed to a metal bench while their father shouted at everyone in reach. Marcus had been accused of stealing tools from a hardware store where he worked. The evidence was weak. The fear was real. Their father's anger gave the officers something easier to focus on than the truth. By morning, Marcus had accepted a deal he never should have taken. Darius had spent years building his life around the lesson he took from that night. Never let somebody else's anger choose who you become. He crouched beside Micah's chair. You don't have to pretend the system is perfect, he said. But you do have to decide who you're going to be inside it. Micah's jaw tightened. What does that mean? It means you protect people without giving anyone an excuse to turn you into the problem. That sounds like letting Connor do whatever he wants. No, it sounds like staying smart. Micah stared at the rover. Darius rested a hand on his shoulder. Defending yourself doesn't mean losing control. And if control doesn't work? Darius was quiet for a moment. Then you come home, he said. You tell me everything, and we handle it together. At 5:30, Darius made scrambled eggs, toast, and turkey sausage in the narrow kitchen. He packed Micah's lunch, checked the science project's loose battery connection, and wrote 3 reminders on a yellow sticky note. Turn in permission form. Call Grandma June. Do not skip lunch. He stuck it to Micah's backpack. Micah read it and frowned. I'm 14. You're right. Darius took the note back, added a 4th line, and returned it. Remember you're 14. Micah shook his head, but a smile broke through. For a few minutes, the kitchen felt lighter. A framed photograph stood beside the refrigerator. Naomi Reed sat beneath a maple tree with a 3-year-old Micah asleep against her chest. Her smile was wide and unguarded. Darius had taken the picture during a family picnic outside Dayton, 2 years before the highway accident that changed everything. He still spoke to her sometimes in the quietest hour. Mostly apologies. Sorry I'm guessing. Sorry he misses you. Sorry I do too. At 6:12, Darius drove Micah the 4 miles to Westbridge Middle School in his aging blue pickup. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick beneath the pale morning sky. As they approached the school, banners stretched across the brick entrance. Westbridge Donor Showcase Building tomorrow, together. Micah looked out the window. You nervous about Friday? Darius asked. No. You rubbed your thumb raw on your seatbelt. Micah released it. The science club presents right after Grant Bellamy's speech, he said. Connor told everyone his dad might cancel the funding if the projects make the school look bad. Your rover works? Mostly. Then let it speak for itself. Micah reached for the door handle, then paused. Dad. Yeah? If somebody smaller than me is getting hurt, I'm not just going to stand there. Darius met his eyes. I know. Even if it gets me in trouble. Darius's voice softened. Trouble and courage are not always the same thing. Make sure you know which one you're choosing. Micah nodded, though not fully convinced. He climbed out, lifted the science rover from the back seat, and headed toward the entrance. Halfway there, he turned. Darius raised 2 fingers from the steering wheel. Micah returned the gesture. Then he disappeared into the school. Darius watched the doors close behind him. By 7, he was inside a maintenance tunnel beneath Linden Falls Central Bus Depot, wearing a Navy work uniform and checking a power junction that had begun overheating during the morning route cycle. His coworker, Leon Price, stood nearby holding a flashlight. You look worried, Leon said. I always look worried. No. Usually you look disappointed in electricity. Darius tightened a connector. Micah's dealing with a kid at school. Bullying? Something like that. Leon's tone changed. School no? That's the problem. I'm not sure who knows what. Leon nodded slowly. My mama used to say a quiet building can hide a lot of noise. Darius glanced at him. Your mother said that? No. I made it up just now. Despite himself, Darius laughed. At 2:18 p.m., the junction was stable. Darius had just signed the maintenance report when his phone vibrated against the metal workbench. The screen showed an automated message from Westbridge Middle School. He opened it. Your student, Micah Reed, has been removed from class following a serious violent incident. Please report to the main office immediately. Darius read it twice. Around him, tools clattered. Radios crackled. A bus engine roared to life above the tunnel, but for one suspended second, he heard nothing at all. Then another message appeared. Do not contact other students or families regarding the incident. Darius stared at the word. His hand closed around the phone. Leon, he said. Something in his voice made Leon lower the flashlight. What happened? Darius was already pulling off his work gloves. They've got my son. The drive from the transit depot to Westbridge Middle School usually took 18 minutes. Darius made it in 11. He obeyed every traffic light. He stopped at every crosswalk, but his hands never loosened on the steering wheel. The automated message replayed in his mind over and over. Serious violent incident. Not argument. Not altercation. Not misunderstanding. Violent. By the time he pulled into the school's parking lot, 3 local news vans were parked near the front entrance, preparing for the upcoming donor showcase later that week. Parents came and went without noticing the man hurrying toward the office, still wearing his Navy maintenance uniform, grease stains visible on both sleeves. The receptionist looked up. Mr. Reed, where's my son? She hesitated. Principal Harrow is expecting you. I didn't ask who was expecting me. She lowered her voice. Office conference room. Darius walked down the hallway with measured steps. Children passed him laughing, carrying backpacks, talking about baseball practice and homework. Normal. Everything around him looked painfully normal. The conference room door stood half open. Inside sat Micah. His backpack rested on the floor beside him. His shirt collar had been torn almost completely loose. A split lip had dried into a thin line of dark red across his mouth. His left cheek was beginning to swell. He looked up. Dad. Darius crossed the room in 3 quick steps. Are you hurt anywhere else? Micah shook his head. My ribs are sore. Darius knelt beside him. Can you breathe? Yeah. Any dizziness? No. Darius carefully lifted Micah's chin, examining the bruise beneath his jaw. Someone had hit him hard. Before he could ask another question, the conference room door opened. Principal Evelyn Harrow entered carrying a folder. She was impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, every strand of blonde hair in place despite the long school day. Behind her walked science teacher Tessa Cole. Miss Cole's right shoulder rested inside a medical sling. Assistant Principal Martin Vale followed, carrying a laptop. Evelyn offered a practiced smile. Mr. Reed, thank you for coming so quickly. Darius stood. What happened to my son? Evelyn placed the folder on the table. At approximately 1:47 this afternoon, Micah physically attacked another student in the science corridor. Micah immediately spoke. That's not... Evelyn lifted a hand. You'll have an opportunity. Darius looked at her steadily. He has one now. A brief silence settled over the room. Evelyn continued. Connor Bellamy sustained facial injuries. During staff intervention, Miss Cole was pushed to the floor. Miss Cole shifted uncomfortably. Darius noticed. He also noticed she hadn't actually nodded. Evelyn opened the folder. Based on witness statements and security footage, I have imposed an immediate 10-day suspension pending an expulsion review. Micah stared at her. You didn't even listen. We reviewed the evidence. You reviewed Connor. Micah. Her tone became colder. You struck another student. Micah leaned forward. He shoved Luis into the lockers. That's enough. He stole enough. Darius stepped slightly in front of his son. I'd like to hear the rest. Evelyn folded her hand. The facts are straightforward. Then hearing them shouldn't be difficult. For the first time, irritation crossed her face. Connor Bellamy was walking toward the science lab when Micah confronted him. No. Micah's voice cut through the room. He was threatening Luis. Evelyn ignored him. Micah became aggressive. No. He threw the first punch. No. The word echoed against the conference room wall. Miss Cole flinched. Martin Vale looked down at the laptop instead of at Micah. Darius turned to his son. Tell me exactly what happened. Micah swallowed. Connor had Miss Cole's phone. The room became very still. Evelyn answered before anyone else could. That's completely unrelated. It isn't. Micah looked directly at Miss Cole. You know he had it. Miss Cole opened her mouth, then closed it again. Evelyn interrupted. The issue before us is violence. The issue, Darius replied calmly, is whether my son is telling the truth. Evelyn nodded toward Martin. Show Mr. Reed the recording. Martin connected the laptop to the conference room monitor. Black screen, then video. The science corridor appeared from an overhead security cam. Students walked through the hallway. Timestamp. 1:47 secondi del pomeriggio. Connor entered the frame. A second later, Micah rushed toward him. The boys collided. Connor stumbled backward. Micah grabbed his sweatshirt. The two exchanged blows. Miss Cole ran into the frame. She disappeared suddenly behind the heavy fire door as it swung closed. The video stopped. Total length, 26 seconds. Martin paused the screen. There. Evelyn folded her arms. As you can see, Darius didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer to the monitor. He replayed the clip. Again. Then once more. The room waited. Finally, he spoke. Play it from the beginning. Martin frowned. That is the beginning. No. Darius pointed. That's where your file begins. Martin looked confused. Evelyn answered. The camera activates when motion is detected. Darius kept staring at the screen. No, it doesn't. Martin blinked. What? I repair automated systems for a living. He pointed toward the upper corner. Motion-triggered systems don't usually start recording after the subject is already in frame. Silence. Darius continued. Where are the 5 seconds before Connor appears? Martin looked toward Evelyn. Evelyn answered first. The system buffers differently. Maybe. Darius wasn't finished. He replayed the clip again. This time he stepped closer. The clock. Martin frowned. What about it? Pause. The frame froze. Darius pointed at the digital timestamp. Advance 1 frame. Martin obeyed. Another frame. Another. Darius watched carefully. Then his eyes narrowed. Back. Martin reversed 3 frames. Darius compared the numbers. His voice became almost a whisper. It jumps. Evelyn crossed her arms tighter. It's a compression artifact. No. Darius looked directly at her. It skips. Martin leaned closer. The timestamp read, 1小时47分19秒. Next frame, 1小时47分31秒. 12 seconds. Gone. Martin stared at the screen. Evelyn spoke quickly. Occasionally, digital recordings lose synchronization. Darius didn't move. 12 seconds? It's uncommon, but possible. He nodded slowly. Interesting. Nobody spoke. Darius kept studying the frozen image. Then something else caught his attention. Micah. Even while grabbing Connor, his son's head wasn't facing Connor. He was looking past him. Toward the left side of the hallway, toward the maintenance alcove, Darius replayed the clip again. Every time. Same thing. Micah wasn't chasing Connor. He was watching something or someone behind him. What was over there? Evelyn frowned. Where? The maintenance alcove. Nothing. You checked? It wasn't relevant. Micah suddenly stood. There was somebody. Sit down. Evelyn's command cracked across the room. Micah slowly lowered himself back into the chair. Darius watched the exchange carefully. Then he turned to Miss Cole. Were you pushed? She hesitated. Everyone noticed. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her sling. I fell. Were you pushed? Another pause. Evelyn answered for her. Her written statement is in the file. I asked Miss Cole. The teacher finally met Darius's eye. Before she could answer, knock. The door opened. School resource officer Caleb Dunn stepped inside. Connor's father is here. Grant Bellamy entered without waiting to be invited. Tailored navy suit. Silver watch. Confident smile. He looked first at Evelyn, then at Darius, finally at Micah. So, Grant said quietly, this is unfortunate. Darius remained silent. Grant continued, my son has a swollen jaw. Darius glanced at Connor, who stood behind his father. Connor's bruise was visible. So was a faint scratch across his neck. But something else caught Darius's attention. Connor refused to look at Micah. Instead, his eyes kept drifting toward the maintenance alcove, visible through the conference room window at the end of the hallway, as though he were making sure something was no longer there. Grant extended a hand. I'm sure reasonable adults can resolve this. Darius didn't take it. I'd rather resolve the truth. Grant smiled politely. The video already did. No. Darius looked once more at the frozen timestamp on the monitor. It didn't. As the meeting finally ended, Darius helped Micah collect his backpack. Neither of them spoke while walking toward the parking lot. Halfway across the courtyard, someone called softly, Micah. They turned. Luis Mendoza stood near the side entrance, looking over both shoulders. His face was pale, his hands trembled. He hurried over, pretending to tie his shoe as he reached them. Without saying a word, he slipped a folded piece of notebook paper into Darius's palm. Then he whispered only 5 words. He had Miss Cole's phone. Before Darius could ask another question, Luis ran back inside the building. Darius slowly unfolded the note. Written in shaky pencil were the exact same 5 words, and beneath them, "Don't trust the video." The rain returned just after sunset. It drummed softly against the windshield as Darius and Micah sat in the pickup outside their duplex. Neither of them seemed ready to go inside. The folded note from Luis rested on the dashboard. "Don't trust the video." Darius read it again before slipping it into his jacket pocket. "Start from the beginning," he said quietly. Micah kept staring through the windshield. "You believed me in there." "I did." "You didn't ask if I threw the first punch." "I asked what happened." Micah nodded once. Then he finally began. "It started after lunch." He took a slow breath. "Science Club was setting up for Friday's donor showcase. Miss Cole left the lab to help another teacher move display tables. Luis and I stayed behind to finish calibrating the rover." "The one you built?" "Yeah." "What happened then?" Connor walked in. Micah's shoulders stiffened. He wasn't alone. 2 of his friends blocked the doorway. What did Connor want? He asked Luis if he'd seen the answer sheet. Darius frowned. "What answer sheets?" "The 8th grade math assessment." Luis said no. Because he hadn't? Because he hadn't. Micah looked directly at his father. But Connor didn't care. According to Micah, Connor claimed Miss Cole kept copies of upcoming assessments inside a locked cabinet until testing week. Connor believed Luis knew where the key was because he often helped organize classroom supplies. Luis kept telling him he didn't know anything, Micah said, but Connor wouldn't stop. What did he do? He started emptying drawers. Darius listened without interrupting. He finally found Miss Cole's phone charging on her desk. Micah paused. He smiled. "Why?" "I don't know." He picked it up, unlocked it somehow, and started scrolling. Did Luis try to stop him? He reached for the phone, and Connor shoved him. Micah's voice grew tighter. "Luis hit the corner of a lab table. You saw that?" "I was 5 feet away." "What happened next?" Connor laughed. The word hung in the quiet cab. He said if Luis kept causing problems, maybe his family should find somewhere else to live. Darius slowly turned toward his son. "He actually said that?" Micah nodded. "He said his dad owned enough apartments to make life difficult." Darius's jaw tightened. "Then what?" Luis looked terrified. Micah swallowed. "I told Connor to give the phone back." "Did he?" "No." He pulled something out of his pocket. "What?" "I thought it was just the phone." "You thought?" "I wasn't looking at his hands." Darius frowned. "What were you looking at?" Micah answered immediately. "The maintenance alcove, the same place Darius had noticed in the video. There was someone standing there." "Who?" "I couldn't see clearly." "Teacher?" "I don't think so." "Custodian?" "He wore a gray district maintenance jacket." Micah shook his head. "But he wasn't one of the regular maintenance guys. You know the maintenance staff. I've met most of them. This guy wasn't familiar." "What was he doing?" "He opened the alcove door, and..." He looked straight at Connor. "Did they speak?" "I couldn't hear." "Did Connor react?" He nodded. Darius felt the first cold thread of something larger pulling beneath the surface. What happened after that? The man stepped inside the alcove. Connor slipped Miss Cole's phone into his hoodie pocket. Then, according to Micah, Connor grabbed something wrapped inside a brown envelope from the alcove shelf. I couldn't tell what it was, but Luis saw it. He looked scared. "Why?" he whispered. Micah closed his eyes, trying to remember. "That's Miss Cole's evidence." Darius leaned forward. "Evidence of what?" "I don't know." "Then?" I walked toward Connor. "You didn't hit him?" "No." I told him to put everything back. "What did he do?" He laughed, and he pushed Luis again. Micah's breathing became slower. I stepped between them. Then Connor swung. "You never told Principal Harrow that." I tried. Micah's voice cracked for the first time all day. She wouldn't let me finish. Silence settled inside the truck. Finally, Darius opened his door. "Let's go inside." The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and cinnamon from that morning. Everything looked exactly as they had left it. The sticky note still clung to Micah's backpack. "Turn in permission form. Call Grandma June. Do not skip lunch. Remember, you're 14. Micah stared at it for several seconds before quietly pulling it off. I never got to eat lunch. Darius looked at the untouched sandwich still inside the lunch bag. His throat tightened. He wanted to promise everything would be fixed. Instead, he simply warmed tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. Neither of them spoke much while eating. After dinner, Darius opened his laptop. "I want names." Micah looked up. Everyone who was nearby. Together they began writing. Connor Bellamy, Luis Mendoza, Miss Cole, Assistant Principal Martin Vale, 3 Science Club students, 2 8th graders passing through the hallway, 1 unknown maintenance worker wearing a gray district jacket. Darius circled the last name, unknown. He underlined it twice. Then he reached for his phone. The first call went to Miss Cole. She answered after 6 rings. "Mr. Reed, thank you for taking my call. A pause." I can't discuss the investigation. I'm not asking about the investigation. Another pause. I'm asking whether Connor had your phone. Silence. Long enough that Darius checked whether the call had disconnected. Finally, I shouldn't comment. Is that because it's untrue? Or because someone told you not to? Her breathing became audible. I'm sorry. The call ended. Micah looked up from the table. She knows. I think she does. But she's scared. Darius nodded. The question is, of whom? The next morning, he filed 3 formal requests with the district. One demanded the complete hallway recording before and after the incident. Another requested every written witness statement. The third asked for maintenance logs covering the science wing camera. By noon, an email arrived. Request partially denied. The district cited student privacy law. Only the edited clip already shown during the disciplinary meeting would be released. Darius read the message twice, then forwarded it to himself at his personal email. He had spent enough years repairing electrical systems to know one simple rule. When someone refuses to show the whole circuit, they usually know exactly where the short is hiding. Late that afternoon, another call came. Unknown number. Darius answered. This is Darius Reed. A calm male voice responded. Mr. Reed, who's calling? Grant Bellamy. Darius leaned back in his chair. I figured we'd speak eventually. Grant sounded almost friendly. I'd rather solve problems than create them. So would I. I think our sons made poor decisions. Our sons? Children are emotional. My son came home bleeding. I'm aware. Grant continued without changing tone. The school is willing to reconsider the length of Micah's suspension. Darius remained silent. Provided, Grant added, that we avoid unnecessary public conflict. What does that mean? It means you acknowledge that both boys share responsibility. They don't. Mr. Reed. Grant's voice cooled slightly. My family has supported Westbridge for years. I know. The school doesn't need weeks of headline. My concern isn't headlines. What is it? The truth. Another pause. Grant Saihu. Sometimes those aren't the same thing. They should be. Grant ignored the remark. If this turns into an official dispute, your son could lose eligibility for the Advanced Engineering Academy next semester. Darius's eyes narrowed. That information had not been announced. Only school administrators should have known Micah had been nominated. How do you know about his application? Darius asked. Grant answered too quickly. I hear things. No. Darius spoke quietly. You heard something that wasn't yours to hear. The line remained silent for several seconds. Then Grant said, almost gently, think carefully before deciding how far you want to take this. The call disconnected. Darius lowered the phone. Micah had heard every word. He wasn't offering peace, Micah said. No. He was offering silence. Darius looked toward the rain gathering outside the kitchen window. Someone inside Westbridge Middle School had shared confidential information with Grant Bellamy. Someone had edited security footage. Someone had pressured a teacher into staying quiet. And someone in a gray district jacket had been standing inside a maintenance alcove moments before the fight. None of those facts felt unrelated anymore. At 11:38 that night, Darius's phone vibrated once on the nightstand. Unknown number. Only one sentence. The camera did not malfunction. Someone logged into the system at 3:42. There was no signature, but Darius recognized the number. It belonged to Miss Tessa Cole. Darius arrived at the diner just after sunrise. It sat 20 miles outside Linden Falls, beside an old state highway where truck drivers stopped for coffee before dawn. Miss Tessa Cole had chosen the location because no parents from Westbridge were likely to recognize either of them. She was already waiting in a corner booth. The sling was gone, replaced by a dark cardigan that concealed the fading bruise along her shoulder. A half-finished cup of coffee rested untouched in front of her. You came? Darius said. I almost didn't. She looked exhausted, not from lack of sleep, from carrying something too heavy for too long. A waitress poured fresh coffee into Darius's mug before quietly walking away. For nearly a minute, neither of them spoke. Finally, Tessa broke the silence. I'm sorry. Darius looked at her. I don't need an apology. I think you do. She lowered her eyes. When Micah said Connor had my phone, her voice caught. He was telling the truth. Darius didn't react immediately. He simply waited. Tessa took a slow breath. 3 weeks ago, I started noticing something strange. What? The top math students weren't surprising me. That's good, isn't it? She shook her head. They weren't the top math students. She explained that several 8th graders who had struggled all year suddenly began earning nearly perfect scores, not 1 or 2 questions better. Entire exam. Every mistake disappeared overnight. The answers were identical, she said, even the wrong ones. Darius frowned. You thought someone had the tests. I hoped I was wrong. So what did you do? I watched. For days, she quietly paid attention. Who entered classrooms after school? Who lingered near locked cabinets? Who volunteered to organize supplies? Then, 2 days before the fight, she found something. I opened Connor Bellamy's backpack by accident. Accident? He asked me to grab his homework folder. Instead, she discovered a folded packet. At first, she assumed they were old worksheets. Then she recognized the watermark. District Assessment Office. She unfolded one page. It contained next week's 8th grade math assessment. Complete. With answer key. I took a picture. You photographed it? Yes. Why not confiscate it? I wanted proof before making an accusation against the son of the district's largest donor. She looked ashamed. I should have taken it. Darius quietly stirred his coffee. What happened next? I planned to meet with Principal Harrow after lunch the following day. The day Micah was suspended. She nodded. But I never got the chance. Tessa closed her eyes briefly. When I returned to the lab, my phone was gone. She remembered searching every drawer, every countertop, every shelf. Nothing. Luis insisted no one except Connor had entered the room. Then Connor suddenly disappeared into the hallway. Micah followed. Seconds later, the fight. I saw Connor holding something black in his hand. My phone. You were sure? I bought that phone case myself. She smiled sadly. It had a crack shaped like a lightning bolt. Darius leaned forward. Why didn't you tell Principal Harrow? I tried. What did she say? Tessa's shoulders sagged. She asked whether I had actually seen Connor steal it. You had. I saw him holding it, but I didn't see him take it. So she told me assumptions destroy careers. Darius stared at her. And then she asked me to write my statement carefully. What does carefully mean? Tessa reached into her purse. She unfolded a photocopy. I kept this. It was a draft of her original statement, different from the version Darius had received. His eyes moved slowly across the page. Student confrontation began before my arrival. Unable to determine which student initiated physical contact, fire door struck my shoulder while attempting intervention. No mention of Micah pushing her. No accusation. No certainty. Darius looked up. The copy in the school's packet says Micah shoved you. I know. You didn't write that. No. Who changed it? I don't know. She hesitated. Or maybe I do. Darius waited. I handed the original to Principal Harrow. When? Less than an hour after the incident. And after that, I never saw it again. The waitress quietly refilled their cups. Neither noticed. Tessa stared through the window toward the empty parking lot. I've taught for 19 years. I've never been afraid to tell the truth. What changed? She laughed softly. It wasn't one thing. My husband lost his job last year. Our daughter starts college this fall. If Westbridge lets me go. She couldn't finish the sentence. Darius understood without hearing the rest. The silence between them no longer felt uncomfortable. It felt honest. Finally, he asked, did Principal Harrow tell you not to speak with me? Tessa nodded once. She said lawyers would twist my word. And if you refused, she reminded me that probationary contract renewals are decided in June. There it was. Not a threat. Not directly, just enough. Enough to make fear sound reasonable. Darius folded the photocopy carefully. You kept this because you knew someday you'd need it. I kept it because I couldn't sleep. They sat quietly until Tessa whispered, I watched your son protect Luis. Darius looked up. He stepped between them. He never looked angry. He looked. She searched for the word. Determined. What happened after Connor hit him? He grabbed Connor's sweatshirt. To stop him? Yes. And then the fire door slammed. She frowned. It happened so suddenly. I've worked around automatic doors for years, Darius said quietly. They don't usually close like that without a trigger. Tessa slowly nodded. I've thought about that every day. When they left the diner, she reached into her purse one final time. This belongs to you. She handed Darius a small flash drive. My lesson plans? No. My classroom backup. You said your phone was stolen. It was. But my tablet automatically copied some files into cloud storage. Darius looked hopeful. Does it include the photo? I checked. And? She shook her head. The image file is corrupted. His shoulders fell. But, she continued, the upload log survived. What does that mean? It proves a photograph existed. It wasn't enough to clear Micah, but it was enough to prove someone had tried to erase something. As Darius drove home, memories he had spent years burying began resurfacing. Marcus, his older brother, 17 years old, handcuffed, accused of stealing power tools from the hardware store where he worked after closing. Their father had stormed into the police station. He shouted, threatened lawsuits, called officers liars. By midnight, Nobody wanted to discuss evidence anymore. They only wanted the angry man to leave. Marcus eventually accepted a plea bargain, not because he was guilty, because everyone was tired. Their father died believing anger had defended his son. Marcus lived believing it had buried him. That night had rewritten Darius's life. He promised himself never to hand powerful people an excuse to ignore the fact. For years, he mistook silence for wisdom, patience for strength, compliance for strategy. When he reached home, Micah sat alone at the kitchen table pretending to finish homework. "You talked to Miss Cole." "I did." "What'd she say?" "She believes you." Micah's pencil stopped. "Then why won't she tell everyone?" Darius answered honestly. "Because she's afraid." Micah looked away. "They're all afraid." "No." Darius sat beside him. "Some are. Others are hoping fear solves the problem before truth arrives." Micah stared at the table. "Do you know what hurt the most yesterday?" "What?" "I thought." He swallowed. "I thought maybe you believed them." Darius felt something tighten inside his chest. "I never believed them. You didn't say anything. I was trying to stay calm." Micah finally looked at him. Sometimes being calm feels exactly like giving up. The words struck harder than any accusation, because they were true. Not completely, but enough. Darius leaned back slowly. "When I was your age," he said, "my brother was accused of something he didn't do." Micah had heard Marcus's name before, never the whole story. For the next 20 minutes, Darius told him everything. The arrest, the shouting, the plea deal, the years Marcus spent trying to rebuild a life stained by a lie. When he finished, the kitchen was silent. "I've spent half my life believing the only way to protect my family was never to lose control." He looked directly at his son. "But maybe," he paused, "I've been so afraid of becoming my father that I've forgotten how to fight." Micah didn't answer. He simply reached across the table. Father and son sat there, hands resting together between unfinished homework and cold coffee. No speeches, no dramatic promises, just understanding. The next morning, Darius opened the official evidence packet the school had emailed overnight. Witness statements, suspension notice, edited hallway footage, administrative summary. He flipped page after page, then stopped. Tessa's statement was there, but not the one she had shown him. Her original handwritten report had vanished. In its place was a typed version carrying only her electronic signature. Different wording, different conclusions, different truth. Someone hadn't just edited a video. Someone had rewritten history. Fun sao? Darius spent the next hour comparing the two versions of Tessa Cole's statement line by line. The differences were subtle. That was what made them dangerous. The handwritten draft said she had been unable to determine who initiated physical contact. The official version stated that Micah Reed aggressively advanced toward Connor Bellamy before physical contact occurred. The handwritten draft described the fire door striking her shoulder. The official version claimed she had been knocked down during Micah's attack. Same teacher, same incident. Two completely different stories. Someone hadn't simply summarized her words. Someone had rewritten them. Darius slid both documents into separate folders before dialing the number Leon had texted him the night before. The woman answered on the second ring. "Nina Patel. My name is Darius Reed. I've been expecting your call." He blinked. "You have?" "Leon Price called me yesterday." Nina's voice was calm and direct. "He told me about your son. And he also told me you aren't looking for revenge. I want the truth." "Good." Brief pause. Truth survives longer in court. An hour later, Darius walked into Patel Legal Group, a modest office overlooking the old courthouse square in downtown Linden Fall. No marble lobby, no expensive artwork, just shelves lined with legal binders and framed newspaper articles describing civil rights victories dating back 20 years. Nina Patel greeted him with a firm handshake. She was in her early 40s, dressed simply, her dark hair pulled into a neat bun. A photograph behind her desk showed a smiling 10-year-old girl holding a science fair ribbon. "My daughter," Nina said after noticing Darius looking. "She and Micah were in robotics camp together years ago. I remember. They built a bridge out of popsicle stick." Darius smiled faintly. It collapsed. It held for 11 seconds, which, according to both of them, was technically a success. For the first time in days, Darius laughed without forcing it. Nina's expression quickly became serious. "Show me everything." For nearly 2 hours, they reviewed every document. The edited hallway footage, Laus's note, Tessa's original statement, Grant Bellamy's phone call, the message about someone accessing the camera system at 3:42. When they finished, Nina leaned back. The suspension itself concerns me, but that's no longer the biggest issue. What is? She tapped the printed timeline. Due proces. Darius frowned. The school suspended Micah before allowing him meaningful opportunity to respond. They denied your request for the complete recording. They're withholding witness statements. And this, she lifted Tessa's 2 report, is potentially evidence alteration. You think we can prove it? I don't know. He answered honestly, but I know where to start. She opened a legal pad. We need 3 things. First, the original digital records. Second, independent witnesses. And third, she met Darius's eye. We identify exactly who had permission to access the security system. That afternoon, Nina filed an emergency request demanding preservation of every electronic record connected to the hallway cameras. If anyone deletes anything now, she explained, they'll have to explain why. By evening, another problem emerged. Micah's expulsion hearing had been scheduled, 4 days away. So fast? Darius asked. The district is moving unusually quickly. Nina frowned, almost as if they don't want additional evidence appearing first. The following morning, Darius drove Luis and his mother, Marisol Mendoza, home after science club equipment was returned to students. Marisol thanked him quietly. He looked exhausted. Luis hadn't spoken more than a dozen words during the drive. As they reached the apartment complex, Marisol hesitated before getting out. Mr. Reed. Yes? I need to ask something. Anything. She looked toward the leasing office across the parking lot. Our landlord. Darius followed her gaze. The sign read, Bellamy Residential Properties. His stomach tightened. Marisol lowered her voice. Luis wants to help Micah. But? She handed him an envelope. Inside was a notice alleging repeated lease violations, late rent, unauthorized repairs, noise complaints. Every accusation was false. It came yesterday, she whispered. We've lived here 6 years. They've never complained before. Luis stared at the ground. Connor said this would happen. Darius felt anger rising. Slow, heavy, controlled. They're trying to scare you. Marisol nodded. They already have. She looked at Luis. I can't risk losing our home. Luis finally spoke. I'm sorry, Mr. Reed. You don't owe me an apology. I told Connor to stop. I know. I should have told everybody sooner. Darius rested a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. You already showed more courage than most adults. Luis's eyes filled. But courage shouldn't cost your family a place to live. After they left, Darius remained in the truck for several minutes. When he returned to Nina's office, he placed the lease notice on her desk. She read it silently. They're retaliating. Can we prove it? Not yet. She looked thoughtful, but retaliation has a habit of leaving fingerprints. That evening, another unexpected visitor arrived. Leon. He carried 2 coffees and a folded sheet of paper. I talked to my cousin, Owen. Leon nodded. Owen Shaw. He services security system. For schools, for half the county. Darius invited him inside. Leon spread a network diagram across the kitchen table. Owen can't discuss confidential footage. I didn't ask him to, but he explained how these camera systems work. He pointed toward several boxes connected by arrow. When somebody exports a recording, he tapped one box. The system automatically creates a diagnostic log. When someone trims a file, another log. When somebody overwrites footage, another log. Darius leaned closer. So every action leaves a trail. Exactly. What if someone deletes the log? Leon smiled. That's what I asked. And? Owen laughed. Why? Because schools don't actually store only one copy. The smile faded. They store backups. Darius felt hope returning. Where? Off-site. The district keeps mirrored server archives. If somebody erased the hallway video, they may have forgotten about the backup log. The next morning, Nina contacted the district requesting those server records. By noon, the response arrived. Unavailable. Reason: routine maintenance update. Logs no longer exist. Nina stared at the email, then quietly picked up her phone. She called Owen herself. The conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. When she hung up, she looked at Darius. They lied. What? The update didn't erase anything. It transferred the archive. Transferred where? To an off-site preservation server. Darius's pulse quickened. So they're still there. If Owen is correct, they never disappeared. Nina immediately prepared a court motion to preserve the backup records before anyone else could access them. As she finished typing, another document arrived from the district's technology department. Administrative access history. 3 names. Only 3 accounts had authority to export hallway recording. District Technology Director Harold Voss. Principal Evelyn Harrow. Assistant Principal Martin Val. Nina circled all 3. No one else? No. Darius looked again. 3 people. one edited video, one missing state, one disappearing truth. Late that afternoon, as he and Nina left the courthouse after filing the preservation motion, Darius noticed someone waiting beside his pickup. Assistant principal Martin Val. He looked pale, his tie hung loose. He glanced around the nearly empty parking lot before speaking. I can't stay long. Darius remained silent. Martin swallowed. You've been asking the wrong question. Nina crossed her arm. What should we be asking? Martin looked over his shoulder, then back at Darius. You shouldn't be asking who changed the video. He paused. You should be asking. His voice dropped almost to a whisper. Who told them to? Martin Vale didn't wait for an invitation. He glanced once across the courthouse parking lot before opening the passenger door of Darius's pickup and climbing inside. Nina remained standing outside for a moment, scanning the nearly empty lot. When she was satisfied no one appeared to be watching, she slid into the back seat. Martin's hands were shaking. I have 10 minutes, he said, maybe less. Darius turned off the engine. Then don't waste them. Martin nodded. You asked who edited the hallway footage. We did. The answer is, he stopped. It was me. Silence filled the truck. Nina didn't react. She simply opened a notebook. Start at the beginning. Martin rubbed both hands together. The afternoon of the fight, Principal Harrow called me into her office. What time? A little after 4. Why? She said there was a privacy issue. Darius frowned. What kind of privacy issue? She told me the hallway recording captured sensitive student information that shouldn't become part of a disciplinary file. And you believed her? I had no reason not to. Martin looked down. At first, he explained that Evelyn instructed him to access the security archive using his administrator account. She stood beside him while he opened the recording. Did she tell you what to remove? No. She only pointed at the timeline. Martin traced an invisible line across the dashboard. She said, delete the protected interval. The protected interval? 12 seconds. The exact 12 seconds Darius had noticed. What happened during those 12 seconds? Nina asked. Martin shook his head. I don't know. You never watched them? I started to. And? Principal Harrow stopped me. She reached over the keyboard and said there wasn't time. Darius stared at him. So you deleted footage without knowing what was in it? Martin closed his eyes. I exported the full file first. You what? I always make a backup before editing. Hope flashed across Darius's face. You still have it? Martin slowly opened his eyes. No. What happened? I saved it into a temporary administrative folder. The next morning, it was gone. Gone how? Deleted. By whom? I don't know. Nina leaned forward. You honestly expect us to believe someone else deleted it? Martin reached into his briefcase. I expected you to ask that. He handed her several printed pages. Server access log. Nina examined them carefully. Martin pointed to one entry. My account exported the video. Another line. My account edited it. Then another. This isn't me. The final deletion had occurred nearly 8 hours later. Different workstation, same administrator privileges, no username, only an internal maintenance override. Nina looked up. Who can use maintenance override? Martin answered immediately. Harold Voss, the district's technology director. Darius exchanged a glance with Nina. The name had appeared again. Martin continued. I confronted Harold. What did he say? He laughed. He said temporary folders exist for a reason. And Principal Harrow? She told me to stop asking questions. Martin's shoulders slumped. I should have gone to the superintendent. You didn't? No. Why? He laughed bitterly. Because I have 2 daughters. My wife just finished chemotherapy. I was afraid. No one spoke. Fear. It kept appearing in different form. Fear of losing a home. Fear of losing a job. Fear of losing a school. Fear of losing a child. Martin finally looked directly at Darius. I've regretted that decision every day since. Nina turned another page. One more thing. The logs show Grant Bellamy entered the building at 2:06 p.m. Martin's head lifted. How do you know that? Visitor records. His expression changed. He wasn't supposed to. What do you mean? Parents weren't contacted until after 2:15. Darius frowned. So why was Grant already there? Martin lowered his voice. He arrived before the office even called Connor's emergency contact. How? I don't know. But I watched him walk straight into Principal Harrow's office. They met alone. For how long? About 20 minutes. And afterward, Evelyn came out looking. He searched for the right word. Terrified. The word lingered. Not angry, not confident, terrified. Martin rubbed his forehead. There's something else. Darius waited. When I first opened the complete hallway recording, you said you barely watched it. I barely watched most of it, but I saw enough. What? There was somebody else. Darius felt every muscle tighten. The maintenance alcove. Martin nodded slowly. A man stepped out. Wearing? A gray district maintenance jacket. The same person Micah described. Martin swallowed. I didn't recognize him. What was he doing? He carried a brown envelope. The camera caught him for about 3 seconds. And then, Evelyn told me to skip forward. Darius's pulse quickened. So the missing 12 seconds included him. No one moved. The unknown man hadn't been Micah's imagination. He had existed, and someone had deliberately erased him from the story. Martin reached into his briefcase one last time. This is all I have. It wasn't another document. It was a printed email. Nina read it aloud. Martin, remove the protected interval immediately. Use standard replacement procedure. We cannot release material unrelated to student discipline. E.H. No explanation. No signature beyond initials. But enough. Why keep this? Darius asked. Martin looked out the windshield. Because deep down, I knew one day somebody would ask what really happened. After Martin left, Darius and Nina remained in the truck. Neither spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, Nina folded the email carefully. This helps. It isn't enough. No. We still don't know who the man in the gray jacket was. Darius started the engine. As they pulled onto Main Street, Nina's phone rang. She answered. Patel. Her expression slowly hardened. What? She reached for a pen. Repeat that. Another pause. Then she thanked the caller and ended the conversation. What happened? Darius asked. Owen checked something. The server access. And he traced Harold Voss's consulting company. Darius frowned. What about it? It's privately owned. So? Nina looked directly at him. It received 3 technology contracts last year. From whom? She handed him her phone. At the top of the document appeared a familiar company name, Bellamy Urban Development Group. Darius read it twice. Grant Bellamy wasn't just the influential father of the student at the center of the fight. His company had been paying the very technology director who possessed the authority to erase digital evidence. The pieces were beginning to connect, but before either of them could say another word, Darius's phone vibrated. It was home. Micah. He answered immediately. Dad? Micah's breathing was uneven. Come home. What's wrong? Someone was here. What do you mean? They went through my room. Darius's grip tightened around the steering wheel. My backpack, Micah whispered. It's been emptied all over the floor. Darius reached the duplex in less than 12 minutes. 2 patrol cars were already parked outside. Red and blue lights reflected across the rain-soaked pavement, painting the small front yard in restless flashes. A neighbor stood on her porch holding a blanket around her shoulders, watching silently. Micah was waiting at the front door. His face had gone pale. I didn't touch anything. Darius nodded once. You did the right thing. Inside, the living room looked untouched. The television, the couch, Naomi's framed photograph. Nothing appeared to be missing. But Micah's bedroom told a different story. Every drawer had been pulled open. His science notebooks lay scattered across the carpet. The mattress had been lifted. Closet shelves were empty. The lining of his backpack had been cut open with something sharp. One of the officers, Sergeant Alan Brooks, finished photographing the room. Mr. Reed? Darius turned. We don't see signs of forced entry. You think my son did this? I'm saying whoever came in may have had access to a key, or the door may have been unlocked. It wasn't unlocked, Micah said firmly. Brooks nodded politely. We'll include that in the report. Darius recognized the careful language. Nothing dismissed. Nothing believed. After the officers left, the silence inside the house became almost unbearable. Micah slowly sat on the edge of his bed. They were looking for something. Darius didn't answer, because he already knew. The flash drive? He asked. Micah shook his head. No. The papers? No. He stared at the floor. There was something else. Darius waited. Micah's hands trembled. I didn't tell you. His father felt his stomach tighten. What didn't you tell me? The day of the fight. Micah swallowed hard. After everyone left the hallway, I found a memory card. Silence. A memory card? It was under the maintenance alcove. You found evidence, and I kept it. Darius closed his eyes. For several long seconds, he said nothing. Not because he wasn't angry, because he was trying to understand. Why? Micah looked ashamed. I thought if I gave it to the school, they'd destroy it. I didn't trust them. Darius sat beside him. Did you watch what was on it? I couldn't. Why not? I didn't have the right adapter. So where was it? Micah looked toward the torn backpack. I hid it inside the lining. Darius followed his gaze. The lining had been sliced open. Empty. Someone had known exactly where to look. He stood slowly. Who knew about the card? No one. No one? Micah hesitated. You have to tell me. I mentioned finding something to Luis. Anyone else? Micah shook his head. Darius walked into the kitchen. He gripped the edge of the sink. His reflection stared back from the dark window. For the first time since this began, Anger rose fast enough to make his hands shake. Not at Micah, at himself. If he had asked different questions, if he had searched the backpack, if he had realized. He slammed one fist against the countertop. The sound echoed through the quiet house. Immediately, he regretted it. Micah appeared in the doorway. "I'm sorry." The words came from both of them at the same time. Darius let out a slow breath. "No." He shook his head. "You don't apologize for being scared. I should have told you. You should have." He looked directly at his son. "But I should have made it easier for you two." Micah lowered his eyes. "I thought every adult already picked Connor." Darius felt those words settle heavily between them. They weren't an accusation. They were a confession. A 14-year-old boy had decided evidence was safer hidden inside a backpack than handed to the adults responsible for protecting him. That realization hurt more than the missing memory card. The next morning, the story took another turn. At the transit depot, Darius was called into his supervisor's office. Supervisor Helen Morris closed the door gently. "I hate having this conversation. What happened?" She slid a printed document across the desk. An anonymous complaint. It alleged that Darius had improperly used city computer equipment to access Westbridge Middle School's security network. He read it twice, then looked up. "I've never touched their system." "I know. But the city has to investigate. I'm being suspended, administrative leave. Paid? Yes. For now. Helen Saihu. I don't believe this. But procedure is procedure." Darius nodded. He wasn't angry with her. Someone wanted him distracted. Someone wanted him defending himself instead of Micah. Outside the office, Leon was waiting. "They got you too?" Darius handed him the complaint. Leon read it silently. "This is garbage. I know. They're trying to bury you." "No." Darius folded the paper carefully. "They're trying to bury the case." That afternoon, local television stations began reporting on the controversy. Sources within the district claim Micah Reed's father has pressured school employees while attempting to obtain restricted security footage. Questions remain regarding whether outside individuals sought unauthorized access to school technology. Darius switched the television off. Micah had heard every word. "They're making you look like the criminal. They're trying. It isn't fair." "No." For several moments, neither spoke. Then the phone rang. "Nina, I've got bad news." "What happened?" "Miss Cole." Darius already knew from Nina's tone. She backed out. "She says she can't testify right now." "Did she say why?" "No. But I suspect someone reminded her how easily teachers can lose contracts." "And Luis?" "His mother refuses to let him appear at the hearing." Darius closed his eyes. "I can't blame her. I don't either." Nina paused. "But we're running out of witnesses." 2 days later, the preliminary expulsion hearing began. The conference room felt smaller than before. More administrators. More paperwork, more distance between adults and the child sitting alone at one end of the table. Principal Harrow spoke first. "The district maintains that Mr. Reed's conduct created a dangerous environment." She presented the edited hallway footage. Again, 26 seconds. Again, no 12 missing seconds acknowledged. Again, Connor appeared to be the victim. Again, Micah remained silent, not because he had given up, because he understood no one intended to hear him. The hearing officer adjusted his glasses. "Do you possess additional evidence?" Nina answered. "We believe the original recording has been altered." "Do you have the original?" "Not yet." "Any witnesses prepared to testify today?" Nina hesitated. "No." The hearing officer sighed. "Based on the evidence currently before the district," he glanced toward Evelyn, "I recommend proceeding with the expulsion review." Micah lowered his head. Darius wanted to stand, to argue, to shout. Instead, he rested one hand gently on his son's shoulder, exactly as he had promised himself. Truth first, anger never. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. Outside the administration building, reporters immediately surrounded the entrance. Nina guided Darius and Micah toward the parking lot through a side walkway. No one spoke. The recommendation wasn't final, but it felt like another defeat. As they reached the pickup, Micah's phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Hello?" Silence. Then a whisper. "Luis?" Micah looked around instinctively. Darius watched his son's expression change from confusion to disbelief. "What?" Micah whispered. "You still have it?" A pause. Then Micah looked directly at his father. Luis's voice, barely audible through the speaker, said 6 words that changed everything. The card they stole was fake. Another pause. "I kept the real one." For 3 seconds, Darius couldn't speak. He stared at Micah, who still held the phone against his ear as though even breathing too loudly might scare the voice away. "Luis," Micah whispered. "Where are you?" "I'm not home." "Are you safe?" "I think so." The answer was enough to make Darius reach for his key. Micah put the call on speaker. Luis's voice trembled. My mom took my little sister to my aunt's house. I told her I forgot my science notebook. I'm at the old greenhouse behind Jefferson Park. Darius looked at Nina. She nodded immediately. Go. I'll meet you there. 20 minutes later, the pickup rolled into the empty parking lot beside the abandoned community greenhouse. The building had been closed for years after storm damage. Broken glass covered parts of the roof, and vines had reclaimed most of the walls. Luis waited inside. He jumped when the door creaked open. It's okay, Darius said softly. It's just us. Luis hurried over, clutching an old gray calculator with faded buttons. I didn't know where else to hide it. Darius frowned. The memory card? Luis nodded. When Micah told me he found one, I got scared. You found one too? Micah asked. Luis shook his head. There were two. He looked down at the calculator. I switched them. Darius exchanged a puzzled glance with Nina, who had just arrived. I don't understand, Nina said. Luis took a slow breath. The day of the fight, after everyone left, I saw something shiny under the maintenance alcove. I picked it up. It was a memory card. I thought it belonged to one of the science club cameras. So why didn't you tell anyone? Darius asked. Luis's shoulders sagged. Connor saw me. He smiled. And he said, Luis swallowed hard. Careful what you keep unless your family likes moving. The words landed heavily in the quiet greenhouse. I got scared. So you hid it? Luis nodded. I remembered our old calculator from robotics club. He turned it over and pressed near the battery compartment. A hidden panel clicked open. Inside rested a tiny black micro SD card wrapped carefully in clear tape. I gave Micah an empty card from home, so if somebody searched his backpack, they'd find the fake one. Micah stared at his friend. You never told me. I thought the less you knew, the safer you'd be. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Nina carefully accepted the card. We're not putting this into a computer here. She slipped it into an evidence envelope. We do everything correctly from this point forward. An hour later, they sat inside Owen Shaw's workshop. The security technician had agreed to examine the card only after Nina explained the legal preservation order, now protecting electronic evidence. Owen slid the card into a forensic reader. Let's hope it's still readable. The progress bar crawled slowly across the screen. 30%, 58, 89. Then, recovered files. One video. Micah stopped breathing. Owen clicked play. The picture appeared. Grainy. Low resolution. The angle came from a small camera mounted inside the science club greenhouse window, pointing toward the corridor entrance. It's our environmental sensor camera, Micah whispered. We installed it to monitor sunlight for the plants. The school had forgotten it even existed. The recording began nearly 5 minutes before the fight. Students walked through the hallway. Teachers passed. Then, a man wearing a gray district maintenance jacket entered the frame. Darius leaned closer. That's him. The man unlocked the maintenance alcove with a master key. He looked both directions before reaching above a ceiling panel. From inside, he removed a thick brown envelope. He checked his phone. Less than 30 seconds later, Connor Bellamy appeared. The man handed him the envelope. Connor looked confused. He opened it. Inside were several stapled packets. Even through the grainy footage, the district assessment watermark was visible. The test answers, Tessa whispered from behind them. Everyone turned. She stood quietly in the doorway. No one had heard her arrive. I couldn't stay away. Her eyes never left the monitor. I knew I'd have to live with whichever choice I made. Nina gave a small nod. Then watch. The video continued. Connor tucked the envelope beneath his sweatshirt. He headed toward the science lab. Moments later, Tessa entered carrying folders. She placed her phone on the desk and stepped into the adjoining classroom. Connor looked around. He slipped inside. He picked up her phone. He unlocked it. Tessa gasped softly. He knew my passcode. Connor searched through the gallery, then froze. He had found something. The photograph, the one Tessa had taken of the answer packet. Connor's face changed. He hurried back into the hallway with the phone. Luis appeared. He blocked Connor's path. Their conversation couldn't be heard clearly, but Connor shoved him violently into the lockers. Luis stumbled. Micah entered the frame. He stepped between them, exactly as he had described. No swing, no attack, just one step forward. Connor threw the first punch. Micah grabbed Connor's sweatshirt. The boys struggled. Then something happened that made Owen pause the recording. The man in the gray jacket had returned. He wasn't running. He walked calmly to a maintenance control panel mounted beside the alcove. He pressed a concealed switch. Seconds later, the heavy fire door slammed shut. Tessa instinctively rushed forward. The door struck her shoulder. She fell. No one pushed me. she whispered. Tears filled her eye. No one ever pushed me. The recording continued. Connor tried to hand the envelope back. The gray-jacketed man refused. Instead, he pointed toward the ceiling panel again. Connor shoved the envelope back into the hiding place. Then Principal Evelyn Harrow entered the hallway. She looked first at Connor, then at the man, finally at Micah. Though the audio remained faint, one sentence came through clearly. Don't say another word until your father gets here. The room fell silent as the recording ended. No one moved. Owen slowly leaned back from the keyboard. I recognize him. Everyone looked at him. The man in the gray jacket. You know him? Darius asked. Owen nodded grimly. That's Harold Voss, the district technology director. He sometimes wore maintenance jackets when inspecting security systems. Nina immediately began taking notes. That connects him directly to the scene. But why was he hiding test materials? Micah asked. Tessa answered quietly. Because someone had to keep the scores high. She looked at Darius. Westbridge's state performance rating had been slipping for years. If scores dropped again, the district could lose funding. Nina nodded, and Principal Harrow was being considered for a statewide leadership appointment. Tessa continued. Grant Bellamy's foundation planned to announce a multi-million-dollar partnership during the donor showcase. High scores, positive publicity, everything depended on the school looking successful. Darius looked back at the frozen image of Harold Voss. So they protected more than Connor. They protected an entire system. No one disagreed. The cover-up had never been about one hallway fight. It had been about preserving reputations, funding, careers, and influence. Micah stared silently at the screen. So everyone knew? No, Darius said. Some people knew, and too many others decided not to ask questions. Nina carefully removed the memory card. We finally have the truth. But now we have another problem. Darius looked at her. What? If we release this the wrong way, they'll claim the evidence was mishandled. We have to preserve the chain of custody. She sealed the card inside an official evidence bag and signed across the tape. We do this through the court. Before anyone could respond, Darius's phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered. A familiar voice spoke calmly. Mr. Reed, Harold Voss. I hear you've been looking for something. Darius didn't answer. Harold continued. You've found more than you understand. What do you want? A simple exchange. What exchange? Bring me the memory card. And if I don't? Harold's voice remained perfectly even. Your son's confidential counseling records after his mother's death. A pause. Will be public before sunrise. The line went dead. The room remained frozen. Micah slowly looked at his father. Someone wasn't just trying to bury the truth anymore. Someone was willing to weaponize the deepest wound their family had ever carried. Harold Voss ended the call before Darius could answer. The silence that followed felt heavier than the threat itself. Micah looked down at the floor. My counseling records? Darius turned toward his son immediately. Look at me. Micah raised his eyes. You have nothing to be ashamed of. I know. But everybody, no. Darius's voice was calm, almost gentle. Grief isn't something anyone gets to use against you. Nina carefully placed the sealed evidence bag into a locked document case. He just made a mistake. Darius looked at her. What do you mean? He threatened a witness. He attempted to extort evidence. And he admitted he knows the card exists. She held up her phone. The call recorder was running. For the first time since Harold's threat, Darius allowed himself a slow breath. Good. Very good. Within an hour, Nina had filed an emergency motion with the county court. The recovered memory card, the environmental camera footage, Tessa's original statement, Martinvale's email, Harold's recorded threat. Everything was submitted under seal. The judge signed a preservation order before sunset. No one connected to Westbridge could legally alter, destroy, or reclaim any of the evidence. When Darius walked out of the courthouse, his phone buzzed again. This time it was Leon. You need to turn on the news. A television inside the courthouse lobby was already showing the story. District Technology Director Harold Voss has canceled tomorrow's public appearance due to what officials describe as a personal emergency. Nina frowned. He's running. Before anyone else could speculate, her own phone rang. She answered. Patel. She listened for nearly 30 seconds, then smiled. Thank you. She ended the call. He didn't get very far. Who? Harold. The State Education Integrity Office requested a preservation warrant. They seized his work laptop before he could leave town. Darius closed his eyes briefly. One piece had finally stopped moving. Across town, inside the Bellamy Development headquarters, another conversation was unfolding. Grant Bellamy stood beside the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Linden Fall. Principal Evelyn Harrow sat across from him. Neither looked comfortable. You told me this was finished. Grant said. It should have been. You assured me the video was handled. It was. Grant slammed a folder onto the desk. Then explain why state investigators are asking questions. Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Instead, she removed her glasses. I protected your son. You protected yourself. I protected this school. Grant laughed once. Without humor, you protected your promotion. Evelyn looked directly at him. And whose foundation announcement depended on Westbridge being the highest performing middle school in the county? Grant's jaw tightened. I never told Harold to steal assessments. No. You only kept rewarding impossible results. Silence filled the office. Finally, Grant spoke. I wanted Connor protected. I never wanted this. Evelyn's expression softened for only a moment. That's the problem. You never stopped to ask how your requests became possible. The following morning, Westbridge Middle School felt unusually quiet. Parents whispered in parking lots. Teachers avoided eye contact. Students sensed something was changing even if they didn't yet understand what. Inside her classroom, Tessa Cole packed lesson materials into a cardboard box. She looked up when someone knocked. It was Darius. You came. I wanted to thank you. You don't owe me thanks. I do. She looked around the empty classroom. I should have spoken sooner. You spoke now. That's what mattered. Tessa reached into the box. I almost forgot. She handed Darius a printed photograph, not the missing image itself. A cloud synchronization report. At the top appeared a thumbnail too damaged to identify detail, but beneath it sat metadata. Upload time. Bir. Kırk on PM. Device. Tessa Cole. Personal phone. Automatics cloud backup. Successful. Nina smiled as she examined it. This proves something important. What? The picture existed before Connor stole the phone, so even if the original image disappears, the backup log proves it wasn't invented later. Tessa nodded. And there may be more. She opened another folder. I checked my personal cloud account again last night. You found something? A reflection. She handed over another printed enlargement. The image remained blurry, but inside the glass door of the lab storage cabinet appeared a faint reflection. A man wearing a district identification badge. Only part of the badge could be read. Vos. Darius Staredatit. Harold. Not perfectly clear, but recognizable. Independent corroboration. Another brick in the wall. That afternoon, Martin Vale arrived at Nina's office carrying a sealed envelope. I can't keep pretending. He placed it carefully on the conference table. Nina opened it. Inside was a printed email chain. The first message came from Evelyn Harrow. Martin, remove the protected interval immediately. Use standard replacement procedure. We cannot release material unrelated to student discipline. Beneath it sat Martin's reply. Should the original remain archived? Evelyn's response arrived only 3 minutes later. No. Follow Harold's instructions. Martin lowered his head. I should have refused. Darius looked at him. Why didn't you? My wife was halfway through chemotherapy. My insurance depended on this job. I convinced myself I was following procedure. He laughed bitterly, but procedure became an excuse. No one judged him, not because his decision was right, because they understood how fear slowly changes into obedience. The emergency school board hearing was scheduled for the next evening. Word spread quickly across Linden Falls. Local reporters filled every available seat. Parents lined the hallway outside. Television cameras pointed toward the entrance long before the meeting began. Inside the auditorium, Micah sat beside Darius. He looked nervous. Darius noticed immediately. You okay? Micah nodded. I'm just... What? I don't want everybody looking at me like I'm the story. Darius smiled gently. You're not. The story is what adults chose to do. Micah looked toward the stage. I just wanted somebody to believe me. Darius rested a hand on his shoulder. They're about to. Board Chair Eleanor Brooks struck the gavel. This emergency session will come to order. Principal Evelyn Harrow stood first. Despite everything, her posture remained composed. She addressed the packed room. The disciplinary actions taken against Micah Reed were based on the information available to school administrators at the time. A few parents nodded. Others remained silent. Nina rose slowly. Madam Chair, we have evidence demonstrating that the information available to administrators was deliberately altered. The auditorium became perfectly still. She handed sealed copies to the board members. Then she looked toward the projection screen. Tonight you will see the complete record. Before the video could begin, Darius leaned toward Micah. No matter what happens. Micah looked at him. I'm proud of you. Micah tried to answer. Instead, emotion caught in his throat. Across the room, Connor Bellamy sat beside his father. For the first time since the suspension, Connor wasn't looking at Micah. He was staring at the floor. As the lights dimmed and the projector came to life, no one in the auditorium realized that one final piece of evidence hidden inside a forgotten administrative hallway camera was about to reveal something even the recovered environmental video had not shown. The lights dimmed. A quiet hum filled the auditorium as the projector came to life. No one spoke. Nearly 200 parents, teachers, reporters, and school officials fixed their eyes on the screen. Nina Patel stepped to the front of the room. "For the integrity of this proceeding," she said evenly, "the following recordings were preserved under court order and examined through verified chain of custody. They have not been altered." Board Chair Eleanor Brooks nodded. "You may proceed." The first recording appeared. The environmental sensor camera, the same grainy footage Darius, Micah, and Nina had already seen, but for everyone else in the room, it was the first time. Harold Voss entered the maintenance alcove. He removed the brown envelope. Connor arrived. The envelope changed hands. Tessa Cole's phone disappeared. Luis was shoved into the lockers. Micah stepped between them. Connor threw the first punch. A ripple of whispers spread through the audience. The board members leaned forward. Then came the next moment. Harold pressed the concealed control switch. The heavy fire door slammed shut. Tessa gasped quietly in the audience as she watched herself struck by the door. No one had pushed her. Not Micah. Not anyone. The recording ended. Silence. Absolute silence. Board member Samuel Ortiz slowly removed his glasses. Principal Harrow. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Did you know this recording existed?" Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Her shoulders, so perfectly straight only minutes earlier, seemed to sink under invisible weight. "I knew another camera might exist." Another wave of murmurs swept through the room. "But I never saw this recording." Nina remained calm. "Yet you instructed Assistant Principal Martin Vale to remove 12 seconds from the official security footage." Martin stood. His face looked older than it had only a week earlier. "That's true. I received that instruction." He handed the board copies of the email chain. The chair examined them carefully. "These emails appear authentic." "They are," Martin replied. "I should never have followed that order." Evelyn closed her eyes. "For that, I accept responsibility." Grant Bellamy suddenly rose. "She's leaving out the important part." Every head turned. Grant adjusted his suit jacket. "I never instructed anyone to alter security footage." "You expect us to believe this happened without your knowledge?" Nina asked. "I expected my son to be treated fairly. Instead, adults panicked." Evelyn looked at him sharply. "Fairly? You came into my office demanding Connor's record disappear." Grant answered without hesitation. "I demanded my son receive due process. You demanded silence." The room grew louder. The board chair struck the gavel. "Order." Grant took a slow breath. "I asked Evelyn to make sure Connor wasn't permanently branded because of one mistake." "One mistake?" Darius said quietly. Everyone looked toward him. "My son was suspended. Luis was threatened. Tessa was pressured. Evidence disappeared. Witnesses were intimidated. My family's private records were used as blackmail." He paused. "And you still call that one mistake?" Grant didn't answer. Instead, he looked toward Connor. His son refused to meet his eyes. Nina walked to the projector again. "The environmental recording established what happened in the hallway, but it doesn't answer one final question." She inserted another drive. "This recording does." A different camera angle appeared. The image came from a small security camera inside the administrative hallway leading to the records office. The timestamp read 2:31 p.m. Less than an hour after the fight, the audience watched as Tessa Cole entered the office carrying her handwritten witness statement. She handed it to Principal Harrow. Then she left. Nothing unusual. 3 minutes later, Assistant Principal Martin Vale entered. He spoke briefly with Evelyn, then walked away. Still nothing unusual. Another 7 minutes passed. A man entered the hallway. Tailored navy suit, silver watch. Grant Bellamy. He wasn't supposed to have access to that area, yet he unlocked the records office using a temporary electronic badge. The audience gasped. Grant remained frozen. On the screen, he removed Tessa's handwritten statement from the file. He folded it carefully, placed it inside his briefcase, then exited the office. No one spoke. The only sound came from the projector fan. Nina paused the image. "Mr. Bellamy," she looked directly at him, "would you like to explain why you removed evidence from a school disciplinary file?" Grant's face had lost all color. He stopped. Then finally whispered, "I was trying to protect my son." Connor looked at him. "No." The word came quietly, almost too quietly to hear. Grant turned. Connor slowly stood. His eyes were wet. "You weren't protecting me." The room fell completely silent. "You were protecting yourself." Grant stared at his son in disbelief. Connor's voice shook. You always said people like us don't lose. You said if we admitted we were wrong, people would take everything. He wiped at his eyes. So I kept lying. He looked toward Micah. You never hit me first. Another pause. I did. Luis lowered his head. Tessa quietly covered her mouth. Connor continued. I took Miss Cole's phone. I deleted the picture. I threatened Luis. And when Micah stopped me, his voice broke. I hit him. No one interrupted. Not even Grant. Connor slowly sat back down. For the first time, he looked less like the powerful donor's son, and more like a frightened 14-year-old who had spent years believing love depended on never admitting failure. Board Chair Brooks looked toward Evelyn. Principal Harrop, did you begin this testing scheme? Evelyn answered immediately, no. Everyone looked surprised. She took off her glasses. Our state performance scores had fallen for 3 consecutive years. If they fell again, we would lose millions in academic funding. Teachers, program, the engineering academy. She looked toward Micah. I convinced myself I was protecting every child in this school. She laughed softly. But the first time I chose the school's reputation over one student's truth, every choice afterward became easier. She looked at Harold Voss, now seated beside 2 investigators. Harold promised higher scores. He promised stability. I should have reported him. I didn't. Harold said nothing. He simply stared ahead. Darius listened quietly. He understood something now. Evelyn had not awakened one morning determined to destroy a child. She had surrendered to fear one compromise at a time. Fear had become habit. Habit had become corruption. The board recessed briefly before returning with its decision. Chair Brooks stood. Based upon the evidence presented, the suspension and expulsion recommendation against Micah Reed are immediately vacated. Applause erupted throughout the auditorium. Micah closed his eyes. For the first time in days, he exhaled fully. The board further recommends independent criminal and administrative investigations into the conduct of Harold Voss, Principal Evelyn Harrow, Grant Bellamy, and any other individuals identified during these proceedings. Another wave of applause followed. Then Chair Brooks looked toward Darius. Mr. Reed, your attorney has informed us that you may pursue significant civil damages against both the district and several individuals. She paused. Do you wish to make a statement? Darius slowly walked to the podium. He looked first at Micah, then at Luis, then at Connor, finally at the audience. When this began, I wanted someone to tell my son that the truth mattered. It does. He took a slow breath. But today gives us another choice. We can spend the next several years trying to destroy every person responsible. Or, he looked toward Evelyn, we can make sure they never have the chance to do this to another child. He turned toward the board. My son's record must be clear. Luis's family must be protected. Every disciplinary case touched by these people must be reviewed. The testing program must be independently audited. The adults responsible should answer in court. He paused. But Connor, the boy slowly looked up, is 14. He should face consequences, real consequences, but he should not become the only person punished for decisions adults taught him to make. The room remained silent. Micah quietly stood. He walked to the front of the auditorium, stopped beside his father, then looked directly at Connor. I don't forgive what you did. Connor lowered his head. But I hope someday you become better than the people who taught you to lie. Connor covered his face with both hands. For the first time since the fight, he cried. The morning after the emergency hearing, Westbridge Middle School looked the same from the outside. The brick walls still caught the first light of day. The American flag still rose above the entrance. Students still hurried through the front doors with backpacks slung over one shoulder. But inside, everything had changed. By noon, the Linden Falls School District released a public statement. It acknowledged that Micah Reed's suspension and recommended expulsion had been based on incomplete and manipulated evidence. His disciplinary record was erased in full. Every reference to the incident was removed from his permanent file. For the first time in nearly 2 weeks, Micah's name appeared beside one word that mattered most: cleared. The district also announced an independent review of every disciplinary case handled by the same administrative team over the previous 3 years. Within a month, 6 student cases were reopened. 2 teenagers who had quietly carried disciplinary records they did not deserve were officially cleared. Parents who had spent years believing no one would ever listen finally found someone willing to ask difficult questions. The investigation expanded quickly. Harold Voss was charged with evidence tampering, unauthorized access to district computer systems, obstruction of an official investigation, retaliation against witnesses, and participating in a testing fraud scheme. The digital records recovered from his office revealed that the hallway video was not the only file he had altered. He had quietly manipulated security footage on multiple occasions whenever disciplinary decisions threatened the school's carefully protected public image. Grant Bellamy resigned from the Westbridge Education Foundation before the board voted to remove him. Investigators later confirmed he had entered the school's records office using a temporary donor access badge authorized by Principal Evelyn Harrow. He faced charges related to removing official records, witness intimidation, and unlawfully obtaining confidential student information. The civil lawsuits that followed would take years to resolve. But one thing happened almost immediately. Grant's influence disappeared. People who had once agreed with him simply because of his name began asking questions they had been afraid to ask before. Connor Bellamy accepted responsibility in juvenile court. His punishment was not designed to destroy his future. He received a lengthy suspension, mandatory counseling, community service, and participation in a restorative justice program, provided that both Micah and Luis agreed to participate. They did. Not because they had forgotten what happened, because they wanted the cycle to end with them. Assistant Principal Martin Vale remained employed under strict probation after fully cooperating with investigators. At a faculty meeting attended by every teacher in the district, he stood before his colleagues and spoke without note. I kept telling myself I was only following instructions. He looked around the room. I've learned that fear explains bad decision. It never excuses them. No one applauded. No one needed to. Tessa Cole returned to her classroom 2 weeks later. When students asked where she had been, she smiled gently, learning something important. She later accepted an invitation to lead a new district ethics committee focused on protecting teachers who reported misconduct. One afternoon, she found a handwritten note waiting on her desk. It simply read, "Thank you for choosing the truth before it was easy." There was no signature. She already knew who had written it. Marisol Mendoza and her children remained in their apartment. Grant Bellamy's property company quietly withdrew every allegation against the family after state investigators began reviewing possible retaliatory housing practices. Luis no longer flinched every time his phone buzzed. Slowly, almost without noticing it, he began laughing again. Darius also returned to work. His supervisor, Helen Morris, met him at the transit depot with a folder in her hand. "The investigation's over, I guess." She smiled. They couldn't find evidence because there wasn't any. She handed him a letter. "Administrative leave. Closed. Employee fully cleared." "I'm sorry," Helen said. "You don't owe me an apology. I signed the paperwork. You followed procedure." Helen looked at him for a moment. "Next time, I'll ask harder questions." Darius nodded. "That's all anyone can do." Several weeks later, attorneys representing the school district offered Darius a confidential settlement. The amount was enough to change his family's life. In exchange, he would agree not to discuss the events publicly. Nina placed the proposal on her conference table. "You don't have to answer today." Darius read every page, then quietly closed the folder. "No." Nina looked at him. "You understand what you're declining?" "I do." "You could secure Micah's college education." "I know." "Then why?" Darius smiled faintly, because silence was the first thing that caused this. Instead, he accepted a much smaller public settlement. The agreement funded an independent student advocate's office serving every middle and high school in the district. Its purpose was simple. Whenever a student faced serious disciplinary action, someone completely independent of the school administration would review the evidence before decisions became permanent. No child would ever again have to stand alone because adults refused to ask one more question. Autumn arrived. Leaves covered the sidewalks outside Westbridge. On Micah's first full day back, conversation stopped as he walked through the hallway. Some students looked away. Others quietly apologized. A few still believed the rumors they had heard before the truth emerged. Healing, Darius reminded his son, rarely happened all at once. At lunch, Luis sat beside Micah without saying much. After a while, he reached into his backpack and placed the rebuilt environmental sensor camera on the table. "I fixed it." Micah laughed. "No, we fixed it." Over the next several weeks, they redesigned the project together. They added redundant storage, automatic cloud backup, encrypted timestamps, multiple recording sources. When another science teacher asked why 2 8th-grade students cared so much about preserving data, Micah answered without hesitation, because the truth shouldn't disappear just because one file does. The remark quietly spread through the school. Months later, during the annual engineering showcase, parents crowded into the gymnasium. Students proudly demonstrated robots, weather stations, drones, and renewable energy models. Near the center of the room stood Micah and Luis beside a new version of their environmental monitoring system. A sign above the display read, "Project Sentinel, reliable data, honest records." Darius stood near the back of the gym. He had learned something over the previous months. His job was no longer to stand between his son and every hardship. It was to stand behind him when his son found the courage to face the world himself. A judge approached the display. "So, Micah, what inspired this design?" Micah glanced across the room until he found his father. Then he smiled. "When I learned how easy it was for one recording to disappear, I decided the truth deserved a backup." The judge nodded slowly. "I think that's one of the smartest engineering goals I've heard all year." The showcase ended just before sunset. Parents drifted toward the parking lot. Teachers locked classroom doors. The courtyard gradually emptied. Darius and Micah walked side by side beneath the soft glow of the campus light. Neither hurried. Neither felt the need to fill every silence. Finally, Micah spoke. "Were you scared?" Darius smiled. "Every second. You didn't look scared. I wasn't trying to look brave. What were you trying to do?" He looked at his son. "Keep choosing the next right thing." Micah thought about that for a while. Then he asked the question that had quietly lived between them since the first day. "How did you stay so calm?" Darius laughed softly. "I wasn't calm. No. I was terrified." He looked up at the evening sky. "I just decided fear wasn't getting the last word." Father and son continued walking until the school disappeared behind them. Micah carried the rebuilt camera in both hands. Months earlier, it had become an unexpected witness to injustice. Now it represented something entirely different. Proof that truth, once protected, could become the foundation for something stronger than fear. Life has a way of testing people long before they realize they're taking an exam. Sometimes that test isn't about intelligence, strength, or success. It's about character. In this story, the greatest danger wasn't a school fight or a missing video. It was the quiet belief that protecting a reputation was more important than protecting a child. One compromise became another, until good people convinced themselves that staying silent was easier than standing up. Yet truth has an unusual quality. It often survives in the smallest details, the overlooked witness, the forgotten recording, the person who finally decides to speak. Darius never won because he shouted the loudest. He won because he refused to let anger replace integrity. Micah never became a hero because he was fearless. He became one because he chose to protect someone weaker, even when it cost him. And perhaps the most important lesson belongs to every parent, teacher, and leader. Children remember far less about what we say than what we choose when doing the right thing becomes difficult. Our decisions become the examples they carry into adulthood. If this story meant something to you, share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. We'd love to hear your thoughts about what true justice looks like. And if you enjoy heartfelt stories about courage, family, and hope, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next one.